Ditch burnout, choose joy, find work that fits. Find work that fits without wasting all those years on the wrong job. Today's show with Beverly Oh, the shortcut queen. You're going to find out all about that. But first,
facing head-on the emotions beneath the surface as we bridge from an old world of confusion and lack to a beautiful new world of freedom, abundance, and love with straightforward truth and inspired hope is what you'll find on The Charla Anderson Show. Collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating. Here's your host, Charla Anderson.
good, beautiful day, you beautiful, beautiful souls. This is Charla Anderson, host of the Charla Anderson Show, collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating, especially you. Ditch burnout, choose joy, find work that fits. Find work that fits without wasting all those years on the wrong job. Today's show with Beverly Oh, the shortcut queen. You're going to find out all about that. But first, we're going to do our 22-second mini vacation. We're going to breathe in some calm for 7 seconds. We're going to hold for 4 seconds, and we're going to breathe out gratitude for 11 seconds. So would you join me now? Let's breathe in some calm. Here we go. Hold. Relax. Release. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ooh, well, thank you for joining me for that. Let's keep ourselves centered and grounded. Okay. I'm so excited. This is going to be great. We've got Beverly O today from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the shortcut queen, and that's her gift. And I cannot wait to have this discussion about, really getting clear on where you fit in, right? So, Beverly, thanks for joining me today. I want you to just share just a bit about who you are, where you came from, where we're going.
Yeah. So I was married for 24 years before going through a divorce. And at that time, I'd been out of the workforce for 14 years, which is a long time. I don't recommend that for anybody. But I was fortunate enough to be married to a high income earner. And so I was able to be at home with my girls. And at the time, it seemed like the right decision. But later on, I did regret that. And I had to reinvent myself like so many women do when change happens. And so I went back to school at that time, earned a master's in counseling and human services. And at that time, I was really clear that I wanted to help women figure out where they fit in the world of work, that it was really important, even if it was just a side hustle or something part-time, that to be left without a solid source of income is pretty difficult. And it takes a lot of effort to get there. So that's where I started from. And I spent many years researching personality assessments, looking at different assessments, and finally landed on the Colby-A index. And I am really passionate about this because, as Shannon Waller says, these are your God-given or factory-installed strengths. They don't change over the course of your life. So the personality assessments, those are not terribly accurate. They can be fairly helpful, but your personality changes over time. And all of those skill sets that you have that go on your resume, your education, life experiences, those can shift as well. But your innate strengths don't change over the course of your life.
Interesting. And let's just spell Colby, because that's an unusual word, and most people
it is
listening rather than watching. So
right. So it's Kolbe.
Colby, and that is your. So I've heard of that too. There's so many tests, and it sounds like you really researched a lot. So the differentiator here is how do they figure that out? How do you? It's got to come from your answers, right?
Right. So you take a 36 question online assessment, takes about 20 minutes, and then you come up with your 4 action modes. And I have my own right here, which is kind of fun. So so when I meet with people, we do a deep dive into what this really means. So there are 4 action modes: fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. And then there are 3 zones of action. And so all of this means something very specific. And just for me, I'm an entrepreneur, and that's what this shows. But
So yeah, I just for the listeners, you've been showing a chart, so that's
right,
yeah.
right.
So that's if I'm not mistaken, I think I did take that because I remember that chart. Maybe I did a long time ago and didn't pay much attention to it at the time, realizing the strength of it. So
Right.
yeah, that's great. So how do you do that? And who are your customers? Who are you looking for? What do you call yourself the shortcut queen, and that's kind of to try and break through the all the noise out there and figure out who you really are, not just in your job, but in your partnerships, relationships.
Right. So the Colby Corp has several other assessments that are available for people. One is Takes Two. That's for couples. So you can find out what your spouse or partner, what their innate strengths are. And you'll also get some helpful tips on finances, vacations, household chores, how to work more effectively together. So that's a really helpful assessment if you can engage your spouse or partner. The other is there's a student aptitude test. So they have to have at least a 4th grade reading level to take that. So that's for those individuals that are under 18. The Colby A index is for 18 and above. But if I've had a 17-year-old take it. He was employed, so I had him do the adult assessment, and we reviewed those results. But if you've got a teen or a middle schooler that's struggling, it's the student aptitude test is a great assessment to help get a sense of what their innate strengths are, because kids can get really discouraged in school if they don't like school. But we've all got our own zone of genius, as I say.
Yeah. Would you repeat the 4 categories again of the Colby that you had on your chart?
Yeah. So it's
Can we guess? Can we
yeah.
guess what I mean? What will I'm there, definitely one closer to choosing one over the other, right?
Right. So it's fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. So there are 3 zones of operation. So when you look at mine, you'll see that long green line. So my initiating action is to look at potential ideas for solving any given problem. And then I go to this next line, which is the fact finder. So I'll do research, determine, what might be the best solution. And then I'll typically go to this next one, which is the blue line, and I'll instinctively look for shortcuts. How can I get this done in a quick and efficient way? And then I'll go to the implementer, which is on this side. So I'll envision results. If I had, this long, I'm having trouble functioning backwards here.
It's hard.
So, but if I had a long line in implementer, I would probably be an engineer, looking at actually building things. But I don't operate that way. So I try to stay away from fixing any kind of equipment.
Okay. So, and this
I
proves
also-
it, right? You probably already knew that. And then
I already knew that. But I tend to visualize what the end result might be. So, as I said, we do a deep dive into what all of this means for you. And it's pretty fascinating. So once the assessment is complete, you'll get an audio description, and you'll also get some tips on what to do and what not to do, because we all can get into this zone where we're doing things that really don't fit us, and it's just frustrating.
And do you mostly deal with women? Who are you trying to target in this? And unconventional coach is another one of your websites, I believe, the shortcut queen
Right.
and unconventionalcoach.com. So that's, people are looking, right? They may or may not know that what they're looking for. I think that that's often the case. And why be in a stuck job longer than you need to if it's not fulfilling you and filling your dreams? Is it possible that just employees, I hear I'm just going to go to work up here at the, dress shop or whatever. Does it address just normal everyday people that want to be employed or just are happy just to be an employee and don't want to do something else? I don't know why that question is coming. Seems weird to me to be asking that.
No, actually, it's a great question, because the Colby is really helpful in terms of building effective teams. So when you think about, duplicating talent across an entire team, you can be quite ineffective. So when you're looking at, a group of employees that need to work together, understanding their Colby is critical, because just looking at my own. So because I'm such an idea person, it's really helpful to have someone on the other end of the spectrum that can sort of put on the brakes and maybe challenge the validity of an idea. I'm pretty good about, throwing out things that don't work. But when you think about it, you want to have a balance in a team. And rarely do we work in isolation. So this is really helpful in a work setting. So if your manager or supervisor understands their own Colby and they know the Colby results of all the team members, you can work together in a much more effective way. Less time, less resources are expended.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, we tend to probably attract people that we are similar to, and then that doesn't necessarily make a big successful team.
No, it doesn't.
So that makes sense to me. But anyway, it's funny that I don't know why I mentioned a store instead of a restaurant or something. Can we all come from life that keeps lifing. You've been through divorce, you've been through the death of a child, right? You lost your daughter.
Right.
And then you have a result that you took action around that instead of wallowing for the rest of your life, right? In grief. So
Right.
What you had a 33-year-old daughter. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, she was adopted as an infant, had a long struggle with mental health issues and substance abuse, and she was actually doing really well at the time, and unfortunately took something that was laced with a really high dose of fentanyl. So she's another one of those casualties. So she left behind a son. He's 10 now, and I have guardianship of him. So I'm one of the many grandparents that are raising, a child. And he's doing well. He's done, went to a grief camp. We've been doing grief work. I have 2 other daughters, and so we've all been working on processing that, adjusting to life without her. One of the things that I've done is I've started an online store, which is in the works, and it's called rebelangel.com. And of course,
Do you spell rebel differently?
Yeah, so I did, because rebel, as it's typically spelled, was already in use. So I had to get creative. So I looked at what would be an alternative spelling. So an alternative spelling was REBUL, and then it's rebelangel.com. And it is an active website, but it's just in the beginning phases. And this is a great example of how you want to collaborate with other people. So if you were to look at the website, you would be clear about our mission, our focus, her story. And so now what I'm looking for is for someone to help with the design, setting up, how things are going to be shipped. And that's the other power of the Colby. We get clarity about who we are, and then we figure out what we're going to commit to. And then the third point is, who are we going to collaborate with to make this dream happen?
So, how old was her son when she passed?
Well, she died 2.5 years ago.
Mm.
So he was fairly young.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I honestly, I have a really good friend, and her ninth child was twins. She had 10 children, and she lost one last year. And just last week, she lost one that had 4 children, that the youngest was 4 months old. So
Wow.
I don't even know details, but it can't, you can't fathom that, right? So um, lots to discover. She's very strong.
Well,
Anyway, yeah. So
yeah.
that's that. So you've taken the grief and shifted it and putting it into this online store. So that's pretty powerful that you do that. What
And one of our goals is to provide small business grants to women who are looking to start an endeavor, because it's very difficult to get a grant, a loan. And Angela was a very generous person. And so that was where that idea came from.
That's awesome. And so you said it's just, well, obviously only a couple of years. So you just stepping into that and building that. And when you say online store, are you going to be selling clothes? You're going to be selling books? You're going to be selling a little bit of anything?
Well, it's sort of a Cyndi Lauper kind of look, if you remember her, with the wild hair, the dress,
80s,
and the
yeah,
jewelry.
yeah.
That was very much my daughter. She was very much she had multiple colors of hair. You never knew what color she would show up in.
That's
And she
fun.
liked to dress. She had her own sense of style. She was, very proud of that. So this is, for women who want to step in and truly be who they are without apology. This will be the place to shop.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cute. So yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like authenticity, right, is the new sexy. We've got
Right.
something to offer out there, and just being real. And I feel like there's maybe this is another discussion, but um, I, when we were growing up, there was a real sense, we knew what to wear on Sundays, and we knew what to wear to school, and we knew kind of what. There seems to be some confusion in our society now that, as long as it's comfortable, it doesn't matter what it looks like, or something along that line, right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Or I mean, this is maybe a deeper sensitivity issue, but I just don't think that there's a ground floor standard that is pretty acceptable. So I love that when you find it, it's like I wear orange glasses with an orange shirt. I want a touch of whimsy. I want to have fun, but also, so it's just kind of one of those curiosities to me a little bit, this watching, if you're a people watcher and as you go shopping or airports
Right.
or whatever. Because as I was a flight attendant, man, we had a uniform and everybody had to wear the same. I mean, similar things, and people dressed up, and it was a privilege to go get on an airplane. And we noticing it became more like the bus people or something that started flying and much, 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 much more casual. I don't know. I don't have a judgment around it necessarily, good or bad, but I feel like is there a missing normalcy or something there? I'm not sure why I'm asking all these questions that don't seem to relate. Are they relating to you?
Well, Steve Jobs was pretty simple in his dress. And so is Mark Zuckerberg. If you look at, his dress, I mean, it's jeans and a t-shirt. And his whole
It's kind of trademark, and I mean, almost in a way, right? That's kind of
and his
their
thought
look.
was there is such a thing as decision fatigue. So when you look at Mark Zuckerberg's closet, you're just going to find t-shirt after t-shirt, jeans. So he doesn't have to think about what he's wearing because he knows when he goes to work, he's got a lot of decisions to make. But this does relate to the Kolbe index because Kathy Kolbe's definition of success is just to be yourself. So that was where this online store came from because Angela was very much about being her. She didn't hold grudges. She wasn't judgmental. She just was herself and she accepted people for who they were. And
it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, that's
right.
That's loving as God loves. That's what I call it. Love as God loves. Unconditional love is my message, my core message. So unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, not unconditional boundaries, however. But that's pretty fascinating what you just said about the decision fatigue, because, I've been the last several years kind of a homebody. I was in a job that I didn't have to make many decisions as what I wore. Do I wear this dress or the pants today? But it was cut and dried what I could wear to work for 34 years. And I think I got tons of clothes, but I don't like making those decisions. I don't want to. Somebody get invited to go somewhere, I'm like, oh, what am I going to wear? I've got, I don't like to shop, which is another piece of that. But I think I don't go sometimes just because I don't want to consider what to wear. I guess maybe that's why I asked that question for me, isn't that funny? But choosing, I like the idea of decision fatigue. And that's honestly, I know for a fact that's the reason I don't change my jewelry. Once I put these earrings in and they've been in for years, so it's not, I don't like making those kind of decisions because I had lots of decisions to make. I had children, many children, and kids and stepkids. And, making those decisions, I've just stopped. I stopped coloring I never did color my hair. I don't want to make decisions that are superfluous, I suppose. And that's a great point. I think I'll just go get a t-shirt closet. It's every color.
Right. And that brings me to another point with the Kolbe is that, once you have clarity about, who you are and how you innately operate, your strengths, I think it helps you eliminate other things in your life that don't serve your ultimate goal or purpose. I think it helps you get clarity on, what you're here to do in the world.
I recently read the book called The One Thing by Keller. Man, I wish I had been a little bit more in tune with that because I've always been kind of scattered, doing a little bit of everything. And, this show is my point every week to Wednesday's show day, right? So I make it about one thing on Wednesdays typically, but so many interests, and I'm an information gatherer. I want to learn, and then the implementation not so much. So that's great. So what are people how are they finding you? You said I believe that you were very clear once you finally figured out after the divorce and after trying to find a way that you now are very focused on the fulfillment of showing others how to do that, how to not have burnout in their job, how to not have wasted years in unfulfilling work.
Yeah, I would say my ideal niche or niche, however you want to pronounce it, would probably be 25 to 35-year-old women, people who are, sort of just getting started in their careers, or maybe frustrated, not sure where they want to go. Do they need more education? But honestly, I'm all about helping anyone who wants to get clarity about where they fit in the world of work. I had someone say, well, men need help with this too. And I said, well, I'm not opposed to working with men. So anyone who's interested, really. And sometimes at midlife, for women, reinventing themselves becomes very important. They've had a partner or spouse who has maybe died, become disabled. Maybe they need to figure out, how to make more money. What would a second job look like? Where would they fit best without completely draining themselves? The other advantage of understanding this is it helps you save mental energy. I mean, physical energy, you can, just go to bed earlier or take a nap. But when you're in a job that really doesn't fit you, you're expending a lot of mental energy, and you're drained at the end of the day. And you can also run the risk of being terminated from a position. So understanding this becomes really important, because you can pitch yourself to your current employer about where you might better fit in the organization. Or if right now there's a lot of layoffs, organizations are being restructured, management is shifting. So if you understand your innate strengths, you can have a conversation with a supervisor or manager and advocate for yourself so that you're maybe not part of a layoff. So, and you can avoid just getting in the wrong job altogether. And of course, if you end up in the wrong job, by understanding this about yourself, you can leave before you get to a point of being terminated, which is a terrible position to be in.
So I have my almost 3.5-year-old grandbaby. She lived with me the first 2 years. She's the delight, but she was here yesterday and today or this morning and spent the night. She does every other week pretty much, and delight, brilliant. So much fun. Watching her, would you think that I could kind of consider maybe, find what her little strengths are at that young of an age?
Yeah, Kathy Colby herself has studied young children. And I have not been studying young children, but it is possible to look at how they begin to initiate, play. You can see, what are they doing? Are they building something? Are they rearranging it? But you can get a sense of how children function. Absolutely.
She's so precise. She lines up all her little cars and all her. My son did that. Oh my gosh! All the Matchbox cars, all her little animals from the ark, and all the little. She lines them up, and then each one goes around. She last night she had all the little rubber animal. I don't know what they are. She loves them, and then she played them along the xylophone, and then they hopped on each other animal, and she put them all the way around the table, and lined them up in a whole circle. And it's just fascinating because she's so precise about that. And I'm just curious if that is possible to kind of get a sense and maybe being able to guide them a little bit.
Yeah, you can. Just for myself, I remember as a child, I was always generating ideas, and I would share ideas with my mother. And I remember getting the response of, well, we can't afford to do that. And I often wondered what would have happened if she'd said, well, that's an interesting idea. How could you make that happen? But she never said that.
Well, she was all focused on what she didn't have, on lack, instead of on
Right,
possibilities.
right,
So that's
right,
where she came from, right?
right.
Wouldn't that be a great thing to think about, though. I mean, we can't afford that, or no, or just, quit daydreaming or all that. I feel like I think don't you feel like we're in a place now that we're a little bit more looking at that side of what fits? I mean, obviously you do, you're doing it, but I mean, even just generally out there looking at and I just like, do it. Go jump on. You want to jump on the trampoline? How high can you go? Look how high. And she can, I mean, amazing what she can do on there. So, and then when she falls down, it's like, shake it off.
Right.
Or are you okay? And, and you want to shake it off, or do you need a hug? It's kind of interesting to me just to witness her little reactions when a lot of times, we've been talking about this too, when they will look up to see if you are going to be upset, or if you know. So tell me some success stories. I mean, I feel like it would be just fascinating to really understand that, what you're talking about, and why it's so important, and then how does it really turn out for people? Because so you take the assessment. What's your part in it? I mean, if you just give the assessment, I mean, I know you got all kinds of credentials behind your name. And Beverly O, by those of anybody, is OH, right? But Beverly O, one of the shortest names we'll run across.
Probably. Yeah, so people are always amazed at how accurate this is. But one really interesting example is I had one woman come to me, and when she took the Colby A index, I said to her, well, your results say that you'd be a great engineer. And she just kind of smiled, and she said, well, at 18, that's what I really wanted to do, but I didn't think I was smart enough. So she earned a degree in nutrition, became a phlebotomist, and then at one point she became a CNA, a certified nursing assistant. So when she met with me, she was already in a nursing program. And I said, well, let's take a deep dive and look at how your strengths will play out versus engineering and nursing. And we together ultimately came to the conclusion that being a nurse practitioner would be a good fit for her, that she could use those innate strengths. She didn't want to go back and start at ground zero with an engineering degree. So sometimes people are that far off course, just as an example. And it's often because of their own limiting beliefs. So then we take a look at, well, what are those limiting beliefs? What kind of distorted identities are you still carrying from childhood that are interfering with your ability to be who you really are? So that's one example. Another, and this also happens to be a nurse. She's already a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and she was looking at, well, do I want to be a nurse practitioner or a nurse anesthetist? So we took a deep dive into, the difference in skill sets, and actually being a nurse practitioner will be a better fit for her. She was drawn to the idea of being a nurse anesthetist. She was already working in critical care. And in our community, a nurse anesthetist can earn $300,000 a year.
My niece almost did that. She decided that she would pass out when she drew blood, so she couldn't pursue it. But I had never heard of it, but it's a very, very lucrative part of that industry. So it sounds like you offer the test, but you offer the coaching past the test, right? So I think that's the value add here. Just any of us can take this test, but how are we going to implement it in our daily lives and in our future? So you're the sounding board and the coach through all that.
Right. And we look at, how do these results actually apply to the real world? What kind of jobs would offer me the kind of satisfaction that might innate strengths, are. So, yeah, it's not necessarily easy to figure out. So, I spend a lot of time talking with people. They have, ideas about where they might want to go. And sometimes it's right on, and sometimes they've really gotten off on a different path. So it's like you said, sometimes people don't know what the problem is when they're out there looking for help. They just
Right.
know that they're unhappy, their life isn't working, and
Something is missing, and something,
right,
there's, I mean, there's no lack of information out here these days, but there is a
right,
lack of understanding. It's and actually more connection. You and I met through Prosper in All Things with Brenda Byers. We met through an amazing coach, and she's got a
right.
membership, and we've met through that. And you said you were looking for a long time to find a coach as like she is, and I'm telling you, she's helping massive amount of Christian women business entrepreneurs to have successful businesses. And so I
Right.
always like try to meet, say where we met and how we know each other. And so that's it. And she's, people don't necessarily know or can't, it takes a lot to delve into it and take the time and be still and know and listen to the still quiet voice and start understanding it. So if you have somebody who is gifted at coaching you through things, that's pretty cool. And I know the Colby A assessment is awesome. And can people just get out there and go buy it by themselves and do it? And then I wonder if that's effective.
Well, they can. Yeah, they can. And, if they elect to do that, that's perfectly fine. But if they want to get more clarity, I'm all about helping people. Um, I, I always say I meet people where they're at. So whatever they're struggling with. So sometimes it's just a combination of things. I know I mentioned to you that I believe two of the most important decisions you make in life are the partner that you choose to share your life with and the career that you pursue. And so understanding yourself is critical for both of those. So if you understand, who you are, where you fit in the world of work, you're going to have a much better chance of probably selecting a partner in life who has the same level of awareness. And whether or not you partner, in a joint mission would be, your choice. But at least, if you know yourself well, you'll be more attuned to whether or not this other person knows themselves well. If they're struggling with other issues, substance abuse. I mean, there's a whole dynamic of issues that people struggle with, abuse from childhood that's driving a lot of the negative beliefs that they have. So it's sometimes really difficult to unravel all of that, which is why I got trained in EMDR. And
So
so
what is EMDR?
eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. So
Whoa. Eye movement?
yes, but you can do tapping. There are other ways to access the right left brain. But typically with trauma, you take on a negative belief, and it drives your life.
And you
So
planned it back here and make up stories about it and have no idea that that's what you're doing.
right, yeah,
And my granddaughter, we've got a gorilla thumps and bear hug. She knows her tapping and her breathing. And so she's,
right,
they call it the karate chop, and it's just
right.
fun. So that is so great. Great thought on that. Finding our, where we fit. And I really, relationships. I have a poster, and it has all kinds of things we should know from. I've had it for years, but the number one satisfaction, or what do you call it? A number one criteria is 95% of your happiness will be determined by who you marry. And if that's the case, That, or I think it says 90%, but I'm like, I think it's more than that. I mean, if who you end up with as a life partner is definitely should be considered more than I think a lot of people do. And I think this is a great idea to help this. And George Eliot, your favorite quote, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." you know,
Mhm.
until they're pushing up daisies, right? So
Right.
that's amazing in of itself. So a lot of people, we go through our life, we're raising our kids, we're going to our jobs, we're doing all this stuff, and all of a sudden, this is where I think I come in with a mindset, kind of a mindset coaching. I'm like, is this all there is? I've done all this, and I'm busy, and I'm now. Now what, right? So let's get a
Mhm.
mindset around how we can move forward. Change is inevitable. Misery is optional. Let's figure this out. So I think that's great. So you also have um, you've got some an offer for anyone who listens to this today or in the future, right?
Right. Right. So I've got a package that's a special today. It's $297. That includes the Colby assessment. They'll get I've got a
It's
note here. So they'll get an interactive action guide, and then I do a customized AI generated best fit career assessment. And they'll have an hour coaching session with me, but I do a deep dive into what they're looking for. We talk about what their Colby results mean and what they can be doing more of, what they probably need to stop doing or maybe delegate, because we all get into these patterns of doing things that really don't fit, and it's very frustrating. So whether they're at a point of, uh, making a decision about getting further education, you don't necessarily have to get more education. These cognitive strengths are just innate. They don't need training or education. It's how you actually operate. So understanding that becomes a critical piece. So that's what I'm offering for people today who are interested, and they can reach me through the websites.
So
And
name your websites again, just for reiteration here.
yep, theshortcutqueen.com and unconventionalcoach.com.
And what your this whole um, offer that you're doing, 297, and that sounds great. Discover your instinctive strengths and your best fit career, right? So
Right,
instinctive strengths, and the whole conversation's been about that. But sometimes we resist things that are so clear into others, right? So I,
right.
you're you're onto something, and um, if you could have your dream person, who's that? Who do you look for? Who is looking for you? And we know with Brenda Byers that whoever we're looking for is looking for us. So
Right,
let's call
right,
her out. Let's call her out.
right. Well, I would say those women between the ages of 25 and 35, but as I said before, I'm happy to work with anyone who's looking for what I'm offering, because I know that I can help them get clarity about where they fit. Sometimes, age discrimination can occur pretty early in a career. So if you're in your, late 40s, early 50s, and you find yourself having to move on for a variety of reasons, that can be a tough spot to be in.
Absolutely. Sometimes, I mean, when I chose to retire, 34-year career, it was I was those people, those people on those planes, my mission field. I loved it. And they offered a package. I'm like, I'm going to be the oldest living flight attendant on the face of the earth. I'm going to be there forever. And I looked at the package, and 2 days before it was due, took the package and then cried because then what? Now what? Now what?
Right.
Because it was my identity in so many ways.
Yes.
And that was a tough bit. I mean, it wasn't, I never sat home wishing I could go, but I loved my job, and it was perfect for me because I I serve people, I'm a server. And
Mhm.
so this would have been a good thing for me back in that time frame, right? Where I was just like, what am I going to do what am I going to do now? And
Mhm.
I wouldn't have taken it except they shut the Dallas base and I was commuting on standby to go to work every trip. And, it just was a lot of, it was hard to get to work. Just I'd go
Mhm.
from Dallas to Atlanta and try to get home on standby and the flights were full. So anyway, it was just, I can relate to this being a really great opportunity for people to just cut to the chase, get there and figure out what are you going to do next, right?
Right. And I tell people retirement is not a biblical principle. And sometimes they laugh at that. And then sometimes they think, well, I'm ready to quit working. But um,
I agree with that. Right?
yeah,
I ain't quitting. We're seniors. I'm 70s and I'm not, I'm not slowing down. Perhaps having a clearer path would have made my retirement years, so to speak. I'm not trying. I mean, I've got now, coaching or network marketing or all of the things that I'm interested in. And speaking. I want to, I feel like speaking is something I earned every one of these silver hairs, right? I need to share that wisdom, right? So, and everything you do must be online because you're in Idaho, which is not
right,
necessarily it's a pretty place, but it's not necessarily accessible to most people,
right, right,
especially in the winter. so,
right.
so the time goes pretty fast here. So we're winding down. This is my last show on Win Win Women platform. It's the last day of that platform forever. And, bittersweet. My last live
Yeah.
television show. Everything will be shifting to uh, YouTube. It'll pretty much be on my website, by the way, charlaanderson.com. All of my shows and podcast are out there as podcasts and as shows. And uh, videos. I'm going to continue doing my shows just exactly like I'm doing here, only it'll just not be live on YouTube. On a platform. So it's not that much different for me that's going to change, but the only thing constant is change, right? so
Right, right, absolutely.
yeah. So thank you for being my guest. Tell us, what is it you want us to know? What do you want us to hear? What is your best life ever? I know that you have the vision. See, that was not always my strength, and it's not to see things ahead of time, and it is a very critical thing. I believe that so we create our reality, right? We create what we want by seeing it and feeling it. And
Right.
so how can we do that better? And what's your last word here? What do you want to leave us with today?
Well, I think it all starts with knowing yourself. And the Colbier Index is a great place to start. I have other tools that I use with people, a saboteur assessment, the EMDR therapy. So I'm a firm believer that there's no reason to be suffering for years, that there are shortcuts to getting to where you want to go. And sometimes it's hard to know what that is because, as a child, your parents are well meaning. They do the best they can and they've got goals for you, but it's not necessarily in line with what you're innately gifted for. So understanding that is a really critical piece. And I do believe that that does make a difference in helping select a partner that's a good fit for you. I see those two things as going together. And so when I talk with people and I'm I always tell them that, that I think the two most important decisions you make in life are the partner you choose to share your life with and the career that you pursue. But we're talking about careers today. The relationship part is another workshop. So
But they are hand in hand, and it
they
would be a
are.
win-win if you could win in job and win in life, win with relationship, and have that long 70-year marriage and all those kind. You and I both have been through the
Right.
divorce thing. That doesn't. We didn't grow up going, I can't wait to get married and get divorced. That's not something we have in our goals typically when we're
No,
choosing
no.
those partners. And we both had long-term marriages, and I was like, I used to say, the first thing I want to ask when I get to the creator, like, why are relationships so hard? I mean, we got to deal with all this other stuff in life, and why aren't relationships simpler, right? So
Right.
that's kind of, obviously it sounds like it is when you have this mindset. And I'll just say this too, it came to mind. The vast majority of people probably don't go out and get help is because they don't think they can afford it. And they probably really can't afford not to. Really,
Right.
if we turn that around a little bit, you can't afford not to.
Right.
I mean, how much time do you save? How much energy do you save when you have the right fit job and
Hmm.
relationship? Man, that's
Hmm.
beautiful, a beautiful thing, a win-win-win.
Yeah. Divorce is expensive. It's costly on many fronts, emotionally, financially,
With
and
your
especially
children.
for,
Just, yeah.
yeah, and for the children, and especially financially for women, depending on the circumstances, because they've often been paid far less in the workplace.
And generally the men are making more and make that's traditional, but it's also it's just the facts, right? So, well, Beverly, oh, thank you so very much. The shortcut queen and unconventional coach, both of those.com. I am so grateful that you took the time today to have time with me and just conversation. I love, this is the highlight of my week, getting to know people and learning what they're offering and learning what they do and learning who they are in this world, right? That's the thing.
Right. Right.
So you've been a pleasure, and I'm excited to get to know you and better. And I'm going to go dig up and see if I can find out if I actually did that test. And do you think if you do it, do you know if people do it a second time, does it typically come back the same? Have you ever?
It's typically it will. Yeah.
Not, it has nothing to do with your circumstances or your life choices between 20 years ago and now.
No, typically, if you're in, one of the things that I should say is if you are in a significant transition, if you've had, let's say, a terrible auto accident, you're in the middle of a very difficult divorce, it may show that you're in transition, which is actually a good thing. All it means then is you'll have to wait and take the test again. So that would probably be the one caveat that I would add. But typically, it doesn't change over the course of your life.
Well, and because it's your gift, your instinctive
Right.
strengths. Yeah, very,
Right.
very important to have that distinction too. So, well, I appreciate you so much joining me, and I'm going to just say that yeah, I don't know, season 3, episode 10 or 11, whatever we're on here is. Yeah, I appreciate you being my last Win Women guest, and we'll keep moving
Yeah.
forward. And what a great thing that you're offering in our world. We're all in this to win. We're all in this together, and I love when we can find the right fit, the right people, and that's what you're doing massively.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm grateful for you. Thank you so very, very much for being my fun guest today. And I got to find that. See if I can find the record button because that technology is always so fun. I appreciate you very much, and I always end my
Yeah.
show with and let's always. I mean, first of all, I'm going to say whoever listens and listens this far, I have a bandana on my face and I have a little scab under there. So if you listen this far and you want curious about it, it's I've got some natural remedy that should be cleaning that up, but I put a band-aid on my face for that. And you're always perfect exactly who and where you are, no matter what. You are loved as there's nothing you can do to be loved more or less by God, by me. Just you are loved. And I sometimes like to end my show with that reminder that if you're in the gutter or you're in the castle, it doesn't matter. You are loved. And if you don't like where you are, you can make a decision to make a different, take a different step, change your words, change your actions. You can't change your past, you can change your future. And that's what we're here for, right? So grateful for you to be here. And I'm going to always, I remember to always choose joy.
Parting is such sweet sorrow. The Charla Anderson Show. Encouraging you to stand strong and courageous with bold faith, no fear, immense hope, kindness, and love, especially towards yourself. Visit charlaanderson.com for replays, blogs, and more on her ever-expanding website, as well as watch her live TV show on winwinwomen.tv, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And so that we can continue learning together and growing this community of beautiful souls, we invite you to share the Charla Anderson Show with your circle of friends. Until we meet again next week, remember always, choose joy.